this is Pam from your Nurse Advocate Consulting. I just want to apologize. We had technical difficulties and it was my fault. It was user error for our webinar for getting your affairs in order. The record button automatically came on and we were waiting for Linda and there was a lot of dead space. So I stopped the recording and then one thing led to another. I got distracted and I forgot to hit the record button. So after I'm done just kind of introducing you to the replay of the webinar, it's going to pick up where Linda shared her story about her parents. And that was when things don't go well because there's no documentation when the affairs are not in order. Linda has 6 siblings. She lost her mom in November, and there's been a lot of angst. There's a lot of distrust. Everybody has their own opinion. And with nothing in writing, it's been very, very difficult for Linda and her family. And so this is where it's going to pick up. And so what you've missed in the recording is me sharing my story about my mother-in-law who had passed away this past April. And she did an amazing job of having all her affairs in order, from everything down with the financial planner, her will, her estate planning. The house was gifted to us ahead of time. And even down to belongings and things like that. She left little, what we called Easter eggs, little notes with who should get what, or on the back of some larger items was the name of the person that should go to. She even left notes saying, don't fight. I've figured everything out. Just follow my wishes. Please don't argue or fight. So she made it very easy, for us to be able to get through the things. Now, it doesn't help going through the house and boxing everything up. I mean, it doesn't stop that drudgery of that whole process, but it does make it a lot easier, and it does take away the conflict because we all could agree to the only decision we had to make was to follow mom's wishes. And she even wrote her own obituary. She had her funeral arrangements planned. She had her life insurance that paid for her funeral. She already had her plot at the cemetery. She even left money to pay for the estate planning attorney to close out the estate. It cost us as a family absolutely nothing. And so what a blessing that was. So we're going to go ahead, and as this goes in, it clicks over, it's going to get into Linda's story. And I do apologize, but thanks for sticking with us.
We ended up with my mom falling and fracturing her hip, which was very traumatic. She had not seen a doctor for many, many, many years. And she ended up going into rehab, and then from there coming home and going into home health. And it was only then that she actually said, okay, Linda, you can be my power of attorney for healthcare, but I still want control. And I said, okay, but that means that if something happens to you, I get to make the decisions. Oh, no, you don't. That's never going to happen. No. I'm going to make the decisions. I said, well, the point is in case something happens, I can help you. And so do you want me to take over? Do you want me to be your financial one? We can do a durable power of attorney, which oversees financial and it oversees healthcare. And I can manage all those things because no one's going to talk to me about your bills if there's a problem with that. And since you're hard of hearing and really don't understand what's being said, it would be really helpful if I had that so I could talk to them if there were discrepancies with your bills. No, I will handle my money. I will deal with it. I just want you to take care of my healthcare decisions that I'm going to help you make. I said, okay, that's fine. We'll talk about it later. My mom was very, very reluctant in getting even that done. We signed the healthcare power of attorney. I was making decisions for her home health. And then she really declined to the point where she needed hospice. And that was another conversation that was just very painstaking because she didn't understand what it was. She didn't understand how it could help. And she really wasn't quite sure because she knew what hospice was because I had placed her brother in hospice and she knew how good it was for him. But yet she said it wasn't right for her. But in the end, she agreed to it, but yet she still did hold a lot of the control until the very end. But in the meantime, we were struggling because there was no one to deal with her bills that did have discrepancies on them. She couldn't deal with them, but the people at the hospital, the billing department, utilization review, wouldn't talk to me because I didn't have the financial power of attorney. or what they call the ownership of the account, because a power of attorney only lasts until while they're alive. Once they're gone, you have no authority. So you either have to be an executor or you have to be an owner of the account to be able to move money and to be able to deal with those types of issues. Well, my mom did not want anybody dealing with her money, so it was very hard. And it was only probably the last month before she died, through just a very reactive phase, that she actually allowed one of my sisters to take over as owner of the checking account to be able to pay her bills. My dad, on the other hand, stayed in home health, and I became his power of attorney for healthcare. But at the end of the day, when my mom passed away, there was really no real set plan, and no plan on what she really wanted except for the funeral. She basically did plan her funeral in the weeks before her death with the deacon and with one of my sisters and with my dad. So she planned her funeral. She actually planned my dad's funeral, and she actually, prepared everything, all the way from the music all the way to the casket. But then again, we did not know, and even my sister, who is the owner of the accounts, really know what other accounts there were and what we were going to do with the house. So they ended up putting the house in a trust very reactively, but nobody really knew what else they wanted. We didn't know if they had paid for burial. We did not know if they had where their investments were. And we're still at this point trying to figure out where some of this stuff is. And it's causing a lot of frustration and rift among us as siblings, because we're not sure. And we're trying to grieve for our mom's death, but we're so busy trying to deal with my dad, who has dementia and can't remember a lot of things. So we can't really ask him. So I've activated him. So he's now got an activated power of attorney for healthcare. So I'm making his healthcare decisions. But again, when we ask him things about what do you know where these things are? Do you know where the investments were kept? Do you know what Ma wanted, what you guys want to do about this? He can't, his executive functions aren't there anymore. So this lack of planning on their part has become a very reactive format for all of the siblings, because there was no planning on my parents' part. They felt it was superstitious and it was going to bring bad luck if they planned all this stuff ahead of time. And because of this, I've done a lot of my pre-planning, because I didn't want to put my children through what my parents have really kind of inadvertently and accidentally and not intentionally, but because of lack of knowledge and how this will affect everyone, have put us in this type of a situation. And we're still working through it. We're now trying to figure out, do we sell the house? What do they want to do with the house? Where is the money going to Dad's care, because he's going to go to an assisted living? What is the plan here? And everybody have kind of got their own agendas in regards to this, and what they want and what they feel is appropriate for my dad and what should happen. And it could have all been avoided if they would have just pre-planned a lot of this stuff. And I'm not saying maybe in their 30s or 40s, although I actually told my children in their 20s that they really need to have certain things in place in case something happens to them, because there's no guarantee that they would call me or his dad in an emergency if something happened. But pre-planning and estate planning and getting your affairs in order is so vitally important for your own peace of mind, but also for the people that are left behind, and trying to deal with it and trying to make ends meet and figure out what did they want, what would they want. We've really, really tried so hard to make sure that we met my mom's needs. And in the end, I don't think any of us really know whether we did or not, because she wasn't forthcoming in what she wanted except for her funeral. So I'm kind of at a loss, and it's making the grieving process harder, because you're not sure. We're not sure if we did right by them, because they never put anything of what they wanted in writing. And that I think is so vitally important, because you want to respect your parents' wishes. You want to respect, what they wanted. And if you don't know, you can't do. You can only assume based on your knowledge of how your parents have lived and who their friends were and what they loved most. So that's my story, and it's still a work in progress right now.
Yeah, thanks, Linda. And Linda's mom passed away. What was the date in November, Linda?
November 14th at 11:39 p.m.
And I know that you didn't have the funeral until was it the 20th of December?
The 20th of December,
Yeah.
because we had to wait for my sister to come in from Florida and another sister to come in from California for them to make arrangements to come in.
Gotcha.
So that was very difficult. That was very difficult because it didn't give my dad closure. It was more of a convenience, I want to say, for them, because then they were off of school, because they both worked for school districts, so they were off of school, so it was convenient. But it was very difficult on my dad because he couldn't get the closure he needed until the day of the funeral. So, and I've already made it very clear that when Dad passes, that will not happen again. You will either come in or you won't come to the funeral, because we're not going to hold it for 5 weeks. So it's convenient.
All right. Well, Linda, I'm going to ask you, since you're on the phone, I'm going to start going through the slides and get through our presentation. And as I go through, I will ask you to chime in if you have something that you'd like to add.
Sure.
Okay. Okay.
Sure.
All right.
No problem.
So everybody.
Again, sorry for me not being able to actually get on the Zoom.
All right. So hopefully then everybody can see the next slide. Why are getting your affairs in order important? And we talked about Linda's story. We talked about activating of a power of attorney. What that means is that once they're in writing, that takes 2 doctors to deem someone incompetent to make their own healthcare decisions. 2 doctors sign a form. Now you're activated. Now that person in the number 1 slot is actually able to make those healthcare decisions. One caveat to mention is if even though they're not they are deemed incapacitated, they can still refuse certain things. So it still gets a little tricky. And so that's a tale for another day. But Linda, do you want to just touch base on, they can refuse a nursing home, correct? What else can they refuse?
Yes, they can refuse pretty much, even though they've been deemed incompetent, they still have rights as individuals. And they still have patient rights within certain settings, like nursing homes, hospitals. So they can refuse their medications. They can refuse treatment. They can refuse to go to a nursing home. They can refuse pretty much anything. They can refuse care staff. They can refuse nursing staff to come in, therapy. They can still pretty much refuse. The issue then comes in is then, as the power of attorney, it becomes very frustrating, because now you have to figure out a way of getting them and keep getting them the care they need and keeping them safe, even though they're still have the right to be able to refuse things. So sometimes it has to go to the point where you have to kind of take total control over their care, especially now with my dad, with his dementia. As his dementia progresses, we may be running into some of those same problems. Right now, he's been pretty complicit and compliant, and I really haven't had any issues with him in regards to, understanding what's going on. And I try to keep him in the loop and explain to him and meet him where he's at and keep him informed of the decisions we're making. I think where a lot of the problems come in is when, as a power of attorney for healthcare or even finance, you don't really keep that individual informed. And all of a sudden you come in and you're making a decision, and they're, of course, because they've been independent all their life and they've been the parent this whole time, and you're still the child, they're still going to resist. They're going to put up that wall and say, no, no, no. So you kind of have to use a little finesse when you're working with them. So because they still want to bring up the parent, you know, I'm the parent, you're the child kind of component.
You know, and that's a really good point. And, you know, that's another reason if you're struggling, if you have a larger family, or even if it's just one sibling or a grand, you know, child or that, if you're struggling, you know, our services such as your nurse advocate consulting or a social worker at the clinic or the hospital or some other third party can also help mediate. And it's always that third party effect where, you know, our siblings have seen us at our best. They've seen us at our worst. We have no credibility with our family. So oftentimes bringing in a third party expert, even though you're maybe sharing the same information as we're sharing, they, you know, people have a tendency to listen to the third party expert more, and that's just human nature, and that's just how it is. So to wrap up
Mm-hmm.
this slide, when we were talking about the differences between a good experience and a bad experience, like I said, my mother-in-law, we were only in probate for 4 months, and I know some families that don't have the documentation and in place, they're in probate for years before they can even wrap things up. Now, if our probate wasn't approved and completed legally, we would not be able to sell her house right now, and we'd be sitting on this. There'd be property taxes to pay, there would be maintenance to pay, there would be all these things to do with her house had she not had everything in writing. So that's another thing to think about. So let's go on to the
Mm-hmm.
next slide. Linda, did you have anything to wrap
No,
up on?
I'm just saying, you know, it really is important to work with an estate planner or an estate attorney in regards to some of these things, whether things should be put into a trust to help avoid probate, what type of a trust you should have, whether it's revocable or irrevocable. So there's a lot of logistical and legal types of things that need to be addressed. And the sooner you can do them, you know, when you're competent and you're not ill and you can be proactive in your approach, the better.
Yeah, and these are all included in our checklists. So in our checklist, and we'll see some in the slides in the workbook, we talk about the professionals that you may need, including an estate planning attorney and a financial planner, what to look for at a credible one, what are some tips on how to choose one. So we've got all of those things in your checklist and in your workbook at your fingertips. So those are the probably the two main professionals that you would need outside of, you know, maybe possibly needing someone else to help prepare for the decisions. One of the other things that a nurse advocate can do, such as Lynn and myself, is when you're looking at long term. So when you're looking at planning for the future, if they have a chronic healthcare condition or they have dementia, or, you know, they have something, like I said, a chronic health condition, we can help look into the future based on the diagnosis and help you determine what services or what equipment or what things need to be put in place down the road and discussed and talked about as these are put together. So that would be one advantage of involving a nurse advocate in the process. So as we go through, there's just we're going to, in the workbook, there'll be some prompts, you know, what does getting it, you know, my affairs in order mean to me? A lot of it is going to be filling the blanks just to help your loved ones have everything at their fingertips. So we've tried to think of as much as we can, such as doctors, their medications, all the logistics, allergies, you know, where are your insurance policies? You know, do they have organ donor preferences? And here's where we kind of get into looking at a financial planner. Are they a fiduciary? What does that mean? There are different types of financial planners out there. There are financial planners that just deal in investments and maybe life insurance. And they're a licensed financial planner, but they're not a fiduciary. What a fiduciary is a step up, so to speak, in the financial planner arena, where they have an obligation to do what's best for you and not have it tied to them earning a income or being compensated. So what I mean by that, so like, for example, our financial planner is a fiduciary. She has her own firm. And so we paid a one-time fee for her to counsel us, put our plan together and all of this. And then she does make a small percentage, but it's not the high percentage that some of the financial planners make that are based where they're making their money based on investments. So we really like the fiduciary point of view because they are obligated by their credentials to do what's best for you and to work for you on your behalf. So those are some of the things to consider. And you may be very happy with your financial planner, and that's great. But we just want to give you some food for thought when you're looking, to get the services from. So what are the assets? What do you, when you go meet with the estate planning attorney, what do you need to look at? Okay, you've got your real estate, maybe your home. Do you have property somewhere? Do you have, like in the Midwest, it's very common for our snowbirds. Maybe they have a vacation home, or they have a condo, or they have a cottage somewhere that maybe needed to be looked at. Now, vehicles. Now, my mother-in-law had a vehicle. So in order for that to clear through the state and go to probate, that was considered an asset. So we had to purchase that. So it was an old car. So, and the Blue Book value was only $500. So my husband purchased the car, and that cleaned that up off the estate, and he can resell it. He can do whatever he wants with it, but the money had to go into the estate account. And that's often what happens, is that all the monies that are in the estate have to go to a separate checking account, and any bills, anything that belongs to the estate needs to be deposited in that account or needs to be paid out of that account. And then once the probate is cleared and the attorney has gotten the paperwork back from the state saying everything's been satisfied, then that estate planning account can be closed. So just some things to think about. We talked about the financial accounts. We talked about the owners versus just signers on the bank account. Retirement accounts, if it's a 401k, if it is, or a truly like an IRA, if it's a retirement account, then if they've left that money to you in a retirement account, then you have to pay fees to the IRS on those monies you receive. Now, we are not financial planners. We are just giving you some tips and some questions to ask. So if you have questions about what your responsibility are as far as taxes go or liability of the IRS, your financial planner is the person to talk to, because they are the experts and they are the one that legally can advise you on finances. Again, we're just trying to give you some food for thought and questions to ask so that you're not blindsided. Linda, anything you want to say on this on this slide before I move on?
Nope, you covered it well.
Okay. So list your debts. This was really helpful with having my husband as an owner of the account, because when my mother-in-law passed away, and obviously with us, we're not selling the house till this spring, so it will be a year that we've kept that house. And so we've still had to pay for the electric bill to keep things going. And she has homeowners insurance and property taxes. So we were able to continue to pay for these things out of her account that she had left for those for that purpose until we were able to sell the real estate. So are there any car loans? Are there any student loans? Some of us as adults, we've co-signed for our children. So are there those student loan debt out there that we are, going to legally responsible for? So those are a lot of things to start thinking out, making a list of what would need to be paid for. There's subscriptions, there's, do they get the newspaper? Do they get magazines? There's so many things. And obviously a lot of those subscriptions can run out, but if things are being automatically withdrawn from your accounts, you got to make sure that you have a handle on that. So in choosing an estate planning attorney, this is, we have a client and it's a very unique situation. Now, they are married. They both have different chronic illnesses, and they're both residing in 2 different assisted livings. The children have just, the power of attorney has been activated by both of them. they, again, like I said, they reside in separate assisted livings, and the family wants it to keep it that way. There's a son and a daughter, so there's 2 adult children. But now they've just sold a house, so they've just have this bucket of money that's available. Now, they were, in looking at their assisted living long term, assisted living is usually private pay. So you pay out of your pocket until you run out of money. And then, depending on the assisted living, they may allow you to continue to stay at that community and then go on Medicaid, which would be the state, your state assistance program. So what some people get in a situation is when you think that you may run out of money, there may be a spend down process. What assets do you have that needs to be delegated in order to be able to spend down, or to be able to get, because you can only have, depending on your state, you can only have so many assets, in your account or that you own in order to be able to get on Medicaid. So sometimes you have to look at the distribution of these assets. And so when you have good planning with an estate planning attorney, they can plan for these type of things and best advise you. So with this particular client, they now are in a position where they have all the assets have been liquidated. And now, how do you know who gets access to what money? Is the money just split 50-50? How is that done legally? Does mom get this money towards her assisted living? Does dad get this money towards his assisted living? So this is going to require meeting with an estate planning attorney to be able to legally separate those assets so they each have their own bucket, of money. Even though they're married, it won't come out of one bucket, so to speak. So lots of things. So lots of reasons to work closely with a financial planner and also an estate planning attorney. And as Linda said, there's wills, there's trusts, there's revocable trust, which means you can change it. There's irrevocable trust, which means you can't make changes. Which is better for you? We got into a situation with our family, with my mother-in-law, where I had mentioned earlier that their oldest daughter passed away. My sister-in-law passed away 2 years ago from cancer. And so when their will and their estate planning was done, they left it, they gifted the home to the 4 children. Now, the verbiage was very specific here. They did not specify living children. So when my mother-in-law passed away, even though there was 3 children left, my husband's brother-in-law, his sister's spouse, was then still entitled to 1/4 of the sale of that house. Now, some families may not mind that. Some families may mind that. So that's another little innuendo to think about when you're planning is, what happens, could you outlive a child, and how do you want that to read? Do you want it to go to that family's, estate? Or do you just want to have it to whatever is the living children that are left? So that's another thing to think about. So
Yep,
distributing.
Pam, one of the other things.
Go ahead.
One of the other things that we're dealing with, and it's also true in some other states, is that, if you have assets to sell, like a home, you need to make sure that you are getting fair market value for that home, along with several different types of bids and quotes, because once that home is sold, once that money is gone, and say that individual needs more care and they outlive the money that's left and they now need to apply for Medicaid, if that home was sold under fair market value to get it off of their plate, to get it out, to get it sold quickly because nobody wanted to deal with it, that could affect that individual's ability to be approved for Medicaid. So there are consequences to selling an asset below market value to get it off of your plate in regards to how your state looks at it, in regards to applying for and needing those state funds to help provide care. So you really need to work with an estate attorney that really gets the big picture on this.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And every state, may be a little different. And I know in our state, in Wisconsin here, part of the probate process, in order to get that probate release and signed off on, we did have to get an appraisal on the property. So that piece, we did have to do. So Linda, that was a great point. So in distributing personal items, if there are certain items of great value, I really, really encourage that to be part of the will, part of the estate planning. My mother-in-law, it was awesome. She had notes, sticky notes on everything. And we called them, as we were going through the house, we called them Easter eggs because we never knew what note we were going to find for my mother-in-law. Oh, this came from Aunt Betty so many years ago. And so said they really liked this. So this should go to blank. And so anything of any value, any heirlooms, all had notes. My mother-in-law, I don't know how she took the time to do this, but kudos to her because she left nothing to chance. And so everybody knew what they were getting. And over the years, if they made a comment, like I made a comment about really liking this antique coffee grinder. And so, my name was put on that. So when she passed, and that was a thing that was nice because when we were going through all the items in the house and sorting through things, getting ready we're going to have an estate sale to sell the things that are not going to the family. And we thought that is a great way to, if there's a lot of things, a lot of people asking for things. Oh, I want that. Well, I want that too. And I want that. And there was no name or it wasn't designated to anybody. We decided that an estate auction was the fairest way to do it. This way, everybody has an opportunity to bid on it. And if they want it that bad, they can pay for it and they know what they want to do. And we thought that was a fair way of giving everybody a chance at that. So with my mother-in-law and the Easter eggs, throughout the years, people, like I said, I commented about the coffee grinder. So people when we were looking at things, that's the one thing we did. We looked at the back of it, we looked at underneath, and did mom have a note on that? So that made everything, simple as well. Now, the financial power of attorney, this is separate from the healthcare power of attorney, and this is something that the estate planning attorney sets up. So we want one of the things the points of this that we want to bring up is when you or you're helping an aging loved one choose a financial power of attorney. My mother-in-law did everything in birth order. Now, so everything had to be changed when my sister-in-law passed away 2 years ago because she was the oldest, and then my husband was next in line. Doesn't have to be that way. I look at my 4 children, and my youngest is the one that has the financial background, accounting and finances. So he's going to be our financial power of attorney. So think about, what family member might serve you the best in that capacity. And the most important thing too is before you put it in writing, you need to ask them, would they be willing to take on this responsibility? And they may or may not, but think about who would best serve you, not just, who's maybe asking you to become, or, really take some time to think about who is best to serve in the role. Now, my oldest son, he is my bleeding heart. He will help take care of me. He will help but when it comes to getting pushback from other people, he's the one most likely to back down because he's a pleaser. He wants to make everybody happy. So he is not one that I would want to put in charge of the finances. So, and we've all talked to the kids about that. They know this. So it's really important to, keep the line of, communication open to really, but think about who should be in those positions. Linda, do you want to add anything to that?
Just remember that a POA ends, the power of attorney ends when that individual passes away. And that means that is both for finance and for healthcare. So you always need to make sure that you have the executor and or the someone who owns the account.
Linda, I'm just going to make one correction there. With our estate planning attorney, the executor or the executor of the estate, they are effective as the executor for up to 6 months after probate is closed.
Yeah, the executor is, yes.
Yes.
But the power of attorneys aren't.
And so those are, again, really good points that you want to make sure that you're addressing with your estate planning attorney. And which brings us to the executor. So what's the difference between a financial power of attorney or an executor? They could be one and the same. We did not have a financial power of attorney for my mother-in-law. We just had an executor, which was my husband. So he made sure all of her wishes were followed, made sure the will was followed, make sure everything went the way my mother-in-law wanted. And he also was in control of the finances. So sometimes they can be separate. You could have co-executors. And I think we have a blended family. So we have 7 children between my husband and I, and we have 2 co-executors because that's a lot of kids and a lot of potential conflict. So we wanted to give one person to have a little bit of support. So there's no right or wrong answer on how you do it. But again, this is the kind of things that you want to discuss with your estate planning attorney. We talked a lot about advanced directives, in our checklist. And if you really, in April, we're going to be doing a workshop. April 26th is National Decision Day, which is encouraging people to have their advanced directives. So if you really want to deep dive into advanced directives, we are going to have that workshop very similar to this in April. So we're not going to dwell on a lot of things, but just knowing that if you have questions about advanced directives, reach out. We have free checklists. We've got videos. We've got all kinds of tools for you that can help you get information on to dive into this a little bit deeper. But the workbook and the checklist will help you think about some decisions and think about some of the things that you need to do to prepare for advanced directives. One of the big things in planning for the future is where do you want to spend, where do you want to live as you age? And, would you be willing to go to a nursing home? Would you not? Most of the advanced directive forms, including the state and including 5 wishes, there's several forms out there that you can use. You check a box. Would you be willing to go to a nursing home? Yes or no? If you're not willing to go to nursing home and you want to age in place and you want to stay home, how is that going to be paid for? How are you going to pay for, maybe you're going to need caregivers to come into the home. Maybe you're going to need someone to do light housekeeping, meal prep, run errands for you. If your children live out of town, how can they support you? And, again, in this spring, the end of March, we're going to have a very comprehensive course on bringing on the complete siblings guide to caring for aging parents. And we're going to walk through every aspect of that. But, what can the out of town kids do, but what needs to be done locally? So how are you going to pay for that? And this is part of your financial planning. Your financial planner can actually look at nursing home costs in your area. They could look at private caregivers costs in your area and build that into your financial plan so that you have enough money set aside or available. Long-term care insurance. The older you get, the more expensive long-term care insurance is, but long-term care insurance is a form of insurance that will pay for caregivers and nurses, things like that to come into your home. Again, something to talk about your financial planner or the person that does your life insurance for you. They can give you information on long-term care insurance. So
the other thing to think about when you're
go ahead, Linda.
End thought. Another quick thought on that is, if you want to stay in your home, will you need a ramp? Is your kitchen set up for you if you are going to be at home in a wheelchair? Is your home set up to be able to be aging in place? So those types of renovations, cost also. So that's another thing to consider is your home, is it one that can be renovated to be able to age in place?
That's a great point, because maybe the home that they've lived in forever is not going to be manageable with maybe the chronic condition that they've come up with. So that's another great point.
Exactly.
Yeah, looking at equipment needs, looking at the home. Lots of things to think about. And which rolls right into planning for healthcare needs, as we were talking about that, like Linda mentioned, a ramp. Does the bathroom need to be, handicap accessible? Do you need grab bars put in? Is the bathroom big enough for a wheelchair to turn around in? These are all things that you need to consider. And again, Linda and I would be very happy to help those that need to kind of look at that and help, predict what kind of things might happen. Is there stairs? Now, my husband and I, we were in our 40s when we built our home. And that was one of the things that we did, is we wanted to have everything on the main floor. So hopefully we could age in place. So our bedrooms, our laundry room, everything is all on the same level, and all our doorways are handicap and wheelchair accessible. So these are a lot of things to think about. So what professionals can help me with my healthcare conditions and services? We talked about us as nurse advocate. Every county and every state has a center for the aging. Now in Wisconsin, we call it the ADRC, or Aging and Disability Resource Center, but it's a government aging, and they are the keepers of all the resources in your county. So anything that you would need, they would be able to tell you what resources are available in your area. So they're a great resource. And the clinic, every clinic has a social worker, and that should be at no cost to you. And so that is another good resource person, and to try and help sort all of these things out. And number 3, when you're planning for your healthcare needs, have the discussion with your family. I have 4 kids. Probably 2 of the 4 of them are not going to wipe my bottom. The other 2 might. So, how much help are your kids going to be? I mean, what are they willing to do and what they're not willing to do? And that's one of the things in our siblings course, is what we go over. We look at the siblings zone of genius. We look at everybody's strengths and weaknesses to try and help you figure out what you might need extra help for. So these are things to think about too. Your parents might assume that you're going to wipe their bottom, but it's real important for you as the adult child, if that's something that you feel uncomfortable to do, especially a son maybe doing that for a mom. Some sons might not matter, but some that's a territory they don't want to be a part of. So, you have to make sure that you share with your parents, say, what, my son has said to me, Mom, I'm going to manage the youngest one with the finance background. He says, Mom, I'm going to manage your money. I'm going to do all that and make sure everything's taken care of. But, don't expect me to, give you a bath. And I say, I get it. I get it. So these are discussions to have with your aging parents as well, to make sure they understand what you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do, because sometimes aging parents just expect it. They raised you, you're the child, they're the parent, they've done their part to raise you. Well, now they expect you to do the same thing for you, but you may not be comfortable doing that, and they need to know that. So some hard conversations a lot of times will occur as you're planning for these affairs. And Linda, anything you want to add to this slide?
Nope, you've covered it well.
Okay. Next is, again, passwords. Where are they computer savvy? How do you get into their computer? How do you get into their emails, or how do you get into, if they're paying bills online, what are their passwords? Where are the wills located? Where are their tax documents? Where are the insurance policies? This all has to be communicated, and has to, be, fortunately, again, like my mother-in-law, she had notes everywhere. You're going to find the tax records here. You're going to find this here. Now, she had them all over her office, but all the certain things that went together were together. Where is the will? Where is the estate? She left us a note. She had a lockbox at one of the banks, the local bank, downtown. And so, and she, in her little Easter egg sticky note where she had this information, she had the combination, they had a safe in their home. So she had that available. See, these are all the little things that you're not going to think of, especially if someone passes away unexpectedly. You're going to have so many overwhelming things that you're going to have to deal with, that these are going to be the last thing that's on your mind until you need to have them. So it's super, super important to have, think about the little things now, when you have the time and the thought process to think about them.
Yes,
So
I can, and I
go ahead,
truly
Linda.
believe, I mean, that is truly, truly important because we still, every time we go to my parents' house now, it's like a treasure trove. It's like a treasure hunt because we're looking to find things. I mean, we have found, bank statements with money. The other day I found $200 just in a dresser drawer. I mean, just, just it's like a treasure trove. We don't know where anything is because my parents never told us where they had things. And now with my dad's dementia, we really don't know if we're missing something. Are there accounts and investments out there that we know nothing about? The one good thing is my parents don't have internet, so they were never computer or online savvy. So it's more of paper and paper documents and where are those paper documents and policies kept. And we are searching for them like a treasure hunt every single weekend.
And that's true. And my mother-in-law and my mom, who's still living, we have one parent left, my mom, and neither one of them did anything on the computer. So that was easy for us. But when we think about us, the adult children, as
Mm-hmm.
we age, we do everything on the computer. And so for our
Right.
children, we've got to think about making it easier for them and how are they going to navigate that process. So next on the slides, we're just
Mm-hmm.
going to talk a little bit about planning for end of life care. You know, to Linda and I, who are very passionate about hospice, we've written a book on the subject, and so for us, talking about end of life cares is an easy and a natural process with our experience. But for other people, it's not. A lot of people are afraid of hospice and they have a lot of stigma and a lot of beliefs around hospice. So these are something that you have to talk about. I mean, you may have an aging loved one that says, hell no, I won't go. And they're not going to agree to hospice. So these are things that you have to talk about because, when that time comes, what do they want for their end of life? Do they want to pass away at home? Do they not want to pass away at home? Where would they go? Do they want to, would they be more comfortable passing away in a hospital or a nursing home? These are things these are all part of the hard conversations, and when I would encourage you to take, as you go through this checklist and our workbook, take bits and pieces at a time. Don't have all the hard conversations at once. It will be extremely overwhelming for you and your aging loved ones. Tackle one subject at a time, you know, um, over a conversation and just chip away at it because some of these conversations, maybe you've been avoiding having some of these conversations because you're either going to get some pushback or it's not going to be a pleasant experience. There may be some arguing or there may be some conflict. So, pick your battles. Maybe take something that might be a little easier to talk about first and then work your way up into the really hard stuff. But, you know, do they have a burial plot? Where is that paperwork located? What cemetery? Or do they want to be cremated? Do they want to have be shown during the funeral, or do they want a closed casket, or is their urn going to be present? So, how do they want you to celebrate their life once they're gone? And so these are some of the things to think about. So Linda, what would you like to add on this slide?
I can tell you the average cost of a regular funeral was just the wake and the funeral, all in pretty much one day, with maybe a church service, and that is going to run anywhere between $13,000 and $17,000 with a reception or luncheon afterwards. So, I mean, these things do have to be planned. I mean, some people don't want all of that; they want just cremation and that. So, you really do need to talk to and figure out how this is going to be planned and what they want, what their wishes are, and then how will it be paid for? And, how will that money be set aside, or will you prepay for it? So, I mean, this is all part of that estate plan because, I mean, it was, even though my mom had pretty much everything planned, I mean, she didn't plan on what she wanted to have, what we were going to place her in the casket. And there were 6 of us, and every one of us had a different idea of what she should be wearing to go to heaven. So, I mean, and it
Yep.
sounds little and it sounds very kind of minute right now, but that was really important to us at that time to make sure she went to heaven the way she wanted to. And we all had a different opinion on it.
That's
At the end
that's a
of the day, we had a
yeah,
consensus, you know?
that's a great point. And just for cost comparison, Linda's mom's funeral was in Chicago. Now, my mother-in-law, we live in a very rural Amish community in Monroe County in Wisconsin. And the cost of my mother-in-law's funeral was a little over $15,000 when everything was said and done, very similar to Linda. You know, we had a one day visitation, funeral, the luncheon, the burial. So that's pretty consistent, you know, across the board, whether you're looking rural or that. And you know, don't hesitate to shop around, you know, for funeral homes if you like. I mean, you may have a connection with one and that's fine, but don't hesitate to reach out and check on the cost. Now, if someone has is considered an indigent, they have no assets, they have no family, they have no resources. Please, your center, your aging and disability center, the social worker at the clinic, um, even the funeral home can help you because there may be some state options where they would give a certain dollar amount to help for a cremation cost. So there's always ways to find out more information. So just, you know, utilize your resources if you feel that you're getting stuck. You know, and talking
Right,
about real quick, talking about how you want your funeral to go. My husband has made it very clear that when he passes away and he is shown at the service, he is going to sleep. So he wants to be in a white t-shirt and pajama pants because he's going to sleep. He doesn't want to be in a suit. He doesn't want to be, I mean, he gave us very specific instructions that he's going to be in his pajamas. So Linda, was there something else you wanted to say?
yeah, there's so many different options now for funerals. So you really do need to shop around. There are green burials. You can be diamondized. You can be cremated and be placed in an urn, or you can be cremated and then buried in a family plot or in a memorial wall. So, and based on a lot of times your religious beliefs, your value system, and also finances will determine how this takes place. But it's better to be proactive in this approach than reactive, because it just threw us in a kind of a tizzy trying to figure out what we wanted our mother in, because of the type of person she was, what she was going to go to heaven in. And we all had different ideas. Could you imagine if we had to plan the whole funeral? That would have just been overwhelming for all of us, because, you know, we didn't know. We did not know what she would want. So we were glad that she did that part.
So that brings us to kind of wrapping things up. And we just, you know, in your workbook, it says, you know, just I commit to completing the Peace of Mind Planner workbook as a gift to myself and my family. So we just encourage you to go through the workbook, go through the checklist. And now what we'd like to do is really thank you for staying with us. I know this is can be a tough topic. It's not something, you know, it oftentimes sits at the top of our to-do list, but it gets shoved to the bottom for a long time because it isn't something that we want to take care of. But it's one of those things that you'll feel so much better once you get it off your plate. And yes, it's cumbersome, and yes, there are going to be difficult conversations, but everybody's going to be much better off when this process is in place. So reach out for support. There's available resources. We've got those in, you know, there'll be links in the workbook as well as the checklist. The National Institute on Aging has some good checklists. We've got some good information. Don't hesitate to reach out. And you know, your small steps today create clarity and peace for tomorrow. So what we'd like to do is take these last few minutes, maybe, you know, 10, 15 minutes or so. If there are any questions, please go ahead. I can allow you to speak, or if you don't feel comfortable coming on camera, you can drop your question into the chat. It's working now, and Lynn and I will be very happy to answer those. And I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen here. Okay. Okay. Yes, Terry. Let me see if, okay, now you should be able to talk. Terry, just unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate it. My husband, my dad is 91. He'll be 92 in a week. and he's fiercely independent. And my mother already passed away, so he has some things done, but I wouldn't have the slightest idea where to find. He has another piece of property, and I have no idea the address or anything. So there's a lot of things I need to talk to him about. My question is, so when my mother was sick, she had dementia,
Mhm.
and we moved her to an assisted living and memory care place. We got help from before she went. We were getting uh, social workers and all kinds of people in home health care. And when we had a crisis, the social worker was able to kind of talk us through it.
Mhm.
Is a nurse advocate something that is covered by insurance?
That- That's a great question. Linda, do you want to take that or you want me to take that?
You can take it.
Um, as right now, independent, there are independent nurse advocates, which Linda and I are. So we work independently. The only type of insurance that covers us right now is long-term care insurance. We're more of an advocate and a consultant, so we don't really do hands-on. So what we are available to do is act as a resource, like, when is it time to get hospice, or what are my resources, with dementia care? What do I do? How do I make the house safe? And if you need home care, we can help you choose one. We can look at, we can research the home healthcare agencies and the hospice agencies in your area and give you the criteria on who has good ratings. So that's mostly what we do. And we have had clients where they've had long-term care insurance and they have paid for our services. So Linda and I always will point you in the direction of any kind of free resources or free services that you can get, because that's just how we do business. So
Uh-huh. If I were to need help discussing some of these things with my dad, um, the last person he wants to talk to is a lawyer because
Mhm.
he's afraid of the price. So
Mhm.
would who do you should I mean, I can go through all of this, but what is between the two of us, my dad and I, and then a
Mhm.
lawyer?
Well, the lawyer would be necessary to put the legal documents in place. So that will, at some point in time,
He has that, yeah.
okay, will be unavoidable. Otherwise, depending on your clinic and how involved your provider and their staff is, they have social workers at the clinic that can
Mhm.
maybe help if he's, familiar with them. You could meet with them at the clinic. Like I said, there's Linda and I, but we obviously would be paid services. There's your aging and disability, your what state are you in, Terry?
Texas.
Okay. So in Texas, like I said, every county, it's probably not going to be called Aging and Disability Resource Center, but it is every county in every state in the United States has a county or a government agency on aging and resources. They would be able to, sometimes they have advisors that can help with this planning process, that you could meet with them at the aging center. So that would be a great place to start as well.
Okay.
And that would be, probably my recommendation. They would share again, other resources that are specifically in your area.
Okay. Okay. So I mean, as you gathered the information for your mother-in-law, I think you said,
Uh-huh.
did you like if I go through, because I'm going to make a binder and I'm going to use
Uh-huh.
this, and I'm going to try to write it all down. I mean, this document is like very sensitive. Are you do you would I talk to somebody and say, hey, I have this, and this, and do you think there's something that I'm missing? I mean, is that where you would talk to a lawyer or to one of these agencies or somebody like you or?
Um, when it comes to healthcare needs, I mean, that was something that Linda and I could advise on. If it has to do with financial, then I really strongly encourage you to talk to the financial planner. And if it's a legal
Mhm.
matter than with the attorney.
Okay. Okay, that helps. Great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
No, you are very welcome. Any more questions that we might have? Ivan, I see that you joined us a little bit late, so I wanted to make sure that if you open up the chat and scroll to the top, you will see the link for the checklist and the workbook. I did email you that this evening, so if in case you didn't get it, it's there. Okay, Angela says she doesn't see that in the chat. Let me go ahead and Terry, did you see the links in for the checklist or the workbook?
Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Um, I did at the beginning, but I printed them out from the email. You had a couple links.
Okay, let me just go ahead and I will pop them in again real quick here. And let me get this one in, the last one in. Okay, there they are. So did those come through okay for everyone?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So with that being said, Linda, is there anything you'd like to say to wrap up?
No, just I think that this is something that, you know, it's tough to do at times, and it can be a lot of work, but it's very proactive, and it's a really good approach. And once you have things in place, you can always go back. It's like a work in progress. You can always go back and change things, add things, take things out, but you know it's there, and you know if something happens, things are the way they should be instead of having them be reactive. And as I said, I've taken steps to make sure that my children will never have to go through that what my parents have actually inadvertently and totally unintentionally, you know, and my parents, you know, they loved us, we loved our parents, but, you know, they were from a generation that they're called the silent generation for a reason. My dad is 92 and my mom was 93 when she passed away. And they came from a generation where you kept things close to the vest and you didn't share your problems with anyone else, and you dealt with your issues within your family and quietly and on your own, and didn't ask a lot of people for help. So I think that's where a lot of the, you know, that belief and value system comes in from.
Angela, I see you have your hand raised. Do you have a question?
Yes, my question is, my parents have these documents, they have some advanced directives and a will, but they're dated from 2003 and addresses have changed and some of these assets are no longer there. If in a worst case scenario, something happened while we're revising these documents, how would that affect things? Do you know?
You know what? No, I don't. And that would be a good question for the estate planning attorney. Now, I can advise on advanced directives, that when it comes to their advanced directives, that's easy. You just make out a new one. And once the new one is completed, the signatures are made, that now becomes the power of attorney for healthcare. And the other one is null and void. They always go by the most recent date. However, it's important that if you do another one and make the changes necessary, that the clinic, the hospital, and everybody that needs to, and the power of attorney themselves actually gets a copy, so everybody has the most recent copy. But legally, the old one is null and void if there is a new one with a newer, more recent date on it.
So while we're still waiting to get that updated, because we're in that's what this is all launching into that process right now. If the worst happened, even though that information is like my address is 2 locations ago, right? Does that negate me being their advocate if my address doesn't match anymore?
No. I mean, it
No,
might make you harder
no,
for them to
absolutely
find,
not.
but no, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, it doesn't. No.
All right. Thank you so much, you guys. Thank you
You're
so much for your content tonight. I really appreciate.
No, you are very welcome. So that with that being said, if we have no more questions, then we'll go ahead and wrap this up, and everybody will get, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording